The U.S. lists 71 foreign terrorist groups, but no white supremacist groups. Surprise, surprise. This article was written February 11th, 2021. And I have to say when it was written because, I mean, how many times are we going to read the same article? Written how many different times? Okay. Okay. But we're going to read it again. Okay. Critics say U.S. is failing by not putting any white supremacist group on State Department's foreign terrorist organization list. In a major escalation in the war on extremism, Canada declared the Proud Boys a terror group this month. The terror designation means that members can face prosecution and have assets frozen. Okay, I'm going to read that again. The terror designation means members can face prosecution and have assets frozen. It's no longer about speech, said Bill Blair, Canada's Minister of Public Safety. It's about violence, and it's about extremism, and it's about terror. Last year, the United Nations cited a growing, increasingly transnational threat posed by extreme right-wing terrorism, noting a recent threefold spike in attacks in mostly Western nations. Yet, the United States is falling behind its Western allies in the fight. Of the 71 groups on the State Department's foreign terrorist organization list, not a single one has white supremacist leanings. I think it's a problem, said Jason Blas. I think it's a problem, said Jason, who served from 2008 to 2018 as the director of the U.S. State Department's Counterterrorism Finance Office that designates organizations and individuals as terrorists. The department identifies foreign groups that support terror. It does not keep a list of designated domestic groups that are terrorists, in part to prevent the wrongful government targeting of political protesters in the U.S. However, Blas, guys, we're going to shorten his last name to Blas, says violent White House supremacist hate groups are increasingly becoming global in operation, opening in new avenues for the government to stop them. In 2019, Blas co-authored a report for the Sofan Center which suggested that the U.S. should begin sanctioning certain transitional white supremacy groups. We recommend a number of organizations that the State Department could consider, Treasury Department could consider for possible sanctions. And to this day, not one of these groups is on the State Department's foreign terrorist organization list. The United Kingdom and Canada have together designated 9 far-right or white supremacist groups as terrorist organizations, allowing these nations to freeze assets and criminalize support for the groups. So that means that they're probably given a warning. They can take all their money and just transfer it to the U.S. because they know they ain't gonna freeze shit. Canada now considers the following far-right white supremacist group terrorist organizations: Altenwaffen Division, The Base, Blood and Honor, Combat 18, the Russian Imperial Movement, and the Proud Boys. The United Kingdom has named as terrorist organizations, Sonic Craig Division, National Action, which also include groups by the names of Scottish Dawn and NS-131, and Farouk Keg Division. In America, far-right extremist groups account for more than 3 times as many killings in the U.S. compared to Islamist radicals in recent years. The Anti-Defamation League reports 75% of the 429 killings in the United States from 2011 to 2020 related to domestic extremists were perpetrated by right-wing killers, as opposed to 20% for those linked to domestic Islamic terrorism or extremism. Blas says the U.S. extremists are increasingly looking to get help from abroad, including by traveling overseas to obtain training. White supremacist camp. They even have a battlefield too. It goes beyond simply having a camp, said Mr. Blas, who pointed out how U.S. neo-Nazis from organization called the Atawaffen Division traveled to the Ukraine to learn from white supremacists there. They come back and they've developed skills on the battlefield or training camps, and those skills could be projected against American citizens like me or you, or like me and you. The far-right Russian imperial movement has operated paramilitary-style training camps for extremists around the world. Okay? This is what the white supremacists are doing. The white supremacists are traveling around the world and learning to all these going to all these training camps and paramilitary training. Like what? American officials say Swedish men attended one of the Russian trainings and later launched a series of terrorist attacks, including the bombing of a cafe. The Russian imperial movement also connected with Matthew Heimbach, one of the main organizers of the hate-filled Unite the Right events in Charlottesville, Virginia, 2017. Heimbach posed in front of the White House next to a member of the Russian imperial movement hoisting a Russian imperial flag. This group has innocent blood on its hands, said Nathan A. Sales, a counterterrorism envoy for the State Department in April 2020, when he announced the U.S. government was labeling the Russian groups and 3 of its leaders as specially designated global terrorists. The department stopped shortly of formally naming the Russian imperial movement a foreign terrorist organization. A separate designation would allow the U.S. prosecutors more leeway in charging American extremists who provide material to support the group. It's very easy to also sanction that group as a foreign terrorist organization, and it will send a very important message. Here's my thing. No new laws. You know how I feel about new laws. Every time you create a new law to try to get these white supremacists, they turn around and flip it and put it on us. And the very same thing happened the last time they tried to create a bill to study, just to study, not to hold anybody accountable, not to put anybody on their list, just to study to see how many white supremacists were in the military. And don't forget that they took that bill and turned it around and flipped it and changed all the wording to only include Muslims and black people, pretty much. Muslims and gangbangers. So as much as this really sounds great, yes, they should be on the list. But changing laws to put them on the list, I don't believe after you change the law that you actually going to put them on the list and do anything to them. So leave the law how it is. Put them on the list how it is. You got everybody else on the list how it is. So what you need to change the law for to put them on the list? It sounds like you want to change the law so you can put us on the list. And leave them off the list. New York apartment landlords getting burned in gentrification crash. Oh my God, it's so sad. So while they are fake impeaching the president, which amounts to a hill of beans because they cannot remove him from office because of the Republican-dominated Senate quietly removed a prohibition against white nationalists serving in the U.S. military after the House of Representatives approved the language earlier this year, the same House of Representatives that voted to impeach Trump, but they cannot remove him because of the Republican-dominated Senate. The change occurred in a recently passed National Defense Authorization Act, which allocated President Donald Trump the largest military budget in U.S. history. Democrats and Republicans allocated some $738 billion for fiscal year 2020 against the protests of some left-wing and libertarian-influenced members of Congress. In July of this year, the House approved the following language. Section 530. Study regarding screening individuals who seek to enlist in the armed forces. Study. The Secretary of Defense shall study the feasibility of in background investigations and security and sustainability screenings of individuals who seek to enlist in the armed forces. Screening for white nationalists and individuals with ties to white nationalist organizations. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and his GOP colleagues, however, stripped the white nationalists and white nationalist organization language from the final NDAA, which is currently awaiting the president's signature during a recent reconciliation meeting between the House and Senate negotiators in favor of a more general reference to extremists and gang-related activity. So they proposed legislation to try to keep white nationalists, aka white supremacists, out of the armed forces. And the Republican-dominated Senate switched up the language and basically targeted black people. The above cited amendment was authored and introduced by Rep. Peter Aguilar in California in an explicit bid to study the possibility of screening and keeping white nationalists from joining the armed forces after several high-profile incidents from the past year revealed that white nationalists had made efforts to infiltrate the military. Now, don't forget, I just did the posts about how when the representative in Washington, Matt Shea, were getting people to come, a lot of them were military. In February, self-described white nationalist Christopher Hansen was arrested for allegedly planning a massive terrorist attack against several high-profile liberal and left-wing politicians and college professors, as well as various media figures. The U.S. Coast Guard and lieutenant was later indicted on various firearm and drug charges. In March and April, Huffington Post reporter Christopher Mathias discovered that 11 service members spread throughout every branch of the military except for the Navy had been allowed to join up and serve. Those 11 individuals were found to be members of white nationalist group Identity Europa. The hate group is best known for planning the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, which resulted in the death of 32-year-old socialist Heather Heyer. Aguilera harshly criticized
a measure in the National Defense Authorization Act that's meant to encourage screening for white nationalists among military recruits no longer contains the phrase white nationalists, thanks to a quiet move by the Senate. The Huffington Post first reported on the change Tuesday. It was later confirmed by other media outlets that compared the House and Senate versions of the NDAA. The amendment was originally passed by the House back in July. It calls on the Secretary of Defense to study the feasibility of screening for white nationalists and individuals with ties to white nationalist organizations. But the final version of the legislation passed by the Senate does not specifically reference white nationalism. Instead, it encourages screening for extremist and gang-related activity. Representative Pete Aguilar introduced the House amendment, and he says he's disappointed with the change. He told CNN, "I introduced my amendment because keeping this hateful ideology out of our military is crucial. We can't address the problem if we won't acknowledge there is one." But a spokesperson for the Senate Armed Services Committee called Aguilar's comment absurd, saying the language in the amendment was expanded to include extremist organizations of all kinds.
As of now, it's unclear which Republican senator or senators was directly responsible for the marked linguistic shift. In response to media coverage, a Senate Armed Services Committee spokesperson told CNN that Aguilar's complaint was absurd because what about other extremists? Ain't that... The language from the amendment, which was agreed to in bipartisan vote by both House and Senate, was expanded beyond Rep. Aguilar's amendment to include extremist organization of all kinds. White nationalists, radical Muslims, gang members, and others who aren't suitable to join the military. Now, I have said on numerous occasions, no new laws. I told you that the white supremacists have control of the laws. If you try to put forth a law to protect us, they will stop it at every turn. Here, they took a law that people tried to use to weed out the white nationalists, white supremacists from the military, and they flipped the language to gang members. Sign up for free text alerts. You can find the link in my bio or in the description.